Welcome back to the Important Nonsense Podcast. Just kidding. It's making the cut. Week 5. Neil Smith, Lance Exley. How's it going, Lance?
Hurting like everyone else with injuries and buys and all the fun stuff that comes about a quarter of the way through the season. So,
Yeah, we're a little further than that, actually. Week 7 is the official halfway point of the fantasy regular season. So
that's right.
we're
Yeah,
closer
yeah,
to a third of the way at this point. Hopefully, everybody survived Week 5. We warned you. Can't say I didn't warn you. If you were here last week, with just navigating the buys is always a challenge. And then the lovely little blow ups that we've had along the way here. Because just when you think people can't get any more injured, well, we'll throw some more injuries, just throw them on the pile. That's just what we'll do. So we've had some very interesting developments here as it relates to guillotine and just fantasy football in general. But we'll start as always, like we do, uh, with quarterback. And boy, quarterback is just super thin right now. If you're playing in guillotine, we've got some suggestions for how to get around, players that might have been chopped. So you might be able to find something that got eliminated. But if you're looking at just pure waivers, it's pretty ugly at this point. So who do you like this week, Lance? Who would you recommend people look into?
I feel Sam Howell is still a popular name. I mean, he just had his first 300-yard game, but the two I'm leaning more towards are Derek Carr. I feel he might have got dropped by a couple people just
Okay,
because of
Derek Carr is
buys
also
and
on my list. Derek Carr is widely available because he was pretty much
yeah.
dropped en masse by everyone once he got hurt a couple weeks ago.
Right. And I mean, he's throwing to Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. He's got Alvin Kamara, who he loves to just pad the stats with out of the backfield. Like, that's a dream scenario. And the second one I got playing with arguably, you know, just as much talent is Baker Mayfield. Same division,
Okay, he's
playing with
also
Mike
on my list
Evans.
too.
Yeah. Chris Godwin. So, I mean, you got those two, and then after that, you're hoping on a prayer from Gardner Minshew if you are that desperate. I feel sorry for you,
That's funny. That's
but
actually pretty much the list because the list is super ugly. So it's just
yeah.
about ordering them. And for me, it was Derek Carr, Baker
Hmm.
Mayfield, and then Howell because I
Howell.
still
Yep.
don't fully trust Howell.
No.
Don't fully trust it, but everybody I guess can have one bad game. The problem with is if you're looking at guillotine for a streaming option, one bad game could literally get you eliminated. So I just don't fully trust it. And then
Right.
beyond that, if you're really desperate, it's Gardner Minshew, the legend of the mustache. He's
That's
there.
about yeah. And with how he's looked this season, it's like if you got to get him, you're kind of
You're
you're taking
hoping
a
that
gamble.
with a full week of practice they can clean that up a little bit. But yeah, because you've lost now Richardson for the next couple weeks. I'd say it's probably at least one more week. It's this week for sure, and I think very possibly the week after.
Yeah.
There's that whole situation because AC joint 2 to 4 weeks. If they're going to be conservative, it's 4, and you just don't know. I don't see. I gotta believe the Colts don't believe that there's some sort of crazy world-beating playoff team. So I don't know that they're going to rush him back because he's kind of Richardson's kind of the franchise at this point. I mean, I know they re-signed Jonathan Taylor, but a lot of that is monopoly money. So you're not really looking at you're kind of looking at that, and then there are some other names, but you'd have to be really desperate, really, really, really desperate. Josh Dobbs would be something if I was really, really
Mm.
desperate. Bryce Young, if I was really, 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 really desperate. But honestly, I got to believe one of those the first group is available. So you're probably looking at a situation where, given the numbers, Derek Carr is probably available. Baker Mayfield's probably available. If he's not, Howell is actually rostered in more leagues than either of them. And then my break glass in case of emergency is probably Gardner Minshew. I think I would prefer that. So I warned you it would be ugly, didn't I, Lance? I warned everyone it's going to be
You
ugly.
did. You
It's
did say
ugly.
this.
So let's hope maybe we can find something that got cut And this is also a problem because Allen probably didn't get cut. Mahomes didn't get cut. Hurts didn't get
No.
cut. It's more than likely that all of that is still there. Lamar, the Ravens lost, but he's still there. Tua, Fields. Maybe if Herbert was out there at this point, I'd be willing to go for it a little bit, because if you need help to not get eliminated, now is kind of the time. We're getting to that
Right.
time of the year. Because then there's all the other things that have just been kind of really crappy. Uh, Kirk Cousins would be interesting because he's playing Chicago. So if he was available, but
Yeah.
now we're going to get into this in detail at wide receiver. I'm nervous about Cousins just because he lost his number one
Without
weapon.
Jefferson. Yeah.
Yeah, he lost his best friend and his number one weapon. Lawrence has been up and down and up and down, and it's just not something I want to trust. Uh,
Not
Joe
when he's not
Burrow,
in
if you
London.
right, right.
Yeah.
Uh, Joe Burrow is something is that's looking better. That he actually looked a lot healthier.
Yeah. No, I mean, he really all you needed from the Bengals offense was just one get right game, and I'm not worried about it anymore. With the Jaguars, they're kind of in the same boat, but I'm gonna need to see a little bit more still from where they're at, because I still don't trust what they have
Well,
going
this would be
there.
the week for it because they're playing the Colts, and the Colts are not
Yeah,
good. But the problem with that is that's a division game, and division games are always weird.
especially in the South. So
Yeah. So the one that I would probably have circled is Stafford.
mm,
Stafford's still somewhat available. I'd
yeah.
be digging into that
Oh,
pretty
absolutely.
aggressively if he was available. And then Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy was somehow available in
Okay.
my league, I would be more than willing to just roll with it at this point. It's it's all down to accuracy, and he has to throw 2 touchdowns to make it worth it.
I
But the
mean,
49ers look like world beaters right now, so
yeah, and at this point, I mean, Brock Purdy has a case for MVP. I'm not saying he's going to win it, but
no,
he
he's not
does
going to win
have
it.
9 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's doing pretty good. I
It's the
mean,
opposite of Jimmy Garoppolo, who they paid all that money to,
yeah.
who's rocking 6 interceptions in like 5 games. Not even 5 games because he missed a game.
Oh
So
yeah.
that's looking terrible. Dak is looking terrible. There's a lot of
Hmm.
things that look terrible. Is the issue? C.J. Stroud
Yeah.
came plummeting back to earth, and now might not have
Jordan
Tank
Love.
Dell. Jordan Love is done. Like that team is just done until
Mm.
they can figure out how to run the ball. And he's on bye this week anyway, so it's not helping you.
No,
So you have
exactly.
that problem. So
Just take a
right
little
now,
bit of pleasure in seeing Green Bay finally struggle with their quarterback.
yeah, I mean
But
it's long overdue. But
yeah.
it's not even necessarily his fault. It's more, I mean, some of it's his fault, but it's more they're not going to be able to do anything until they can figure out some kind of running game,
Hmm.
because
And
he
then,
can't get through the reads fast enough to work the underneath of the field.
hmm.
So I'm watching him play, and this is what I watch. They snap the ball to him. He looks at his first read. If that's not there, he immediately rolls out of the pocket. He doesn't even look at the checkdowns. He waits for whoever to be running downfield with their arm up, and he just hurls it. And if they catch it, great. And if they don't, it's a pick or it's a 3-and-out. And either way, the defense gets what they want. So what's happened is, with no actual running game to speak of, you can stop talking to me about AJ Dillon. You're never going to convince me that AJ Dillon's any good. He averaged 3.6 yards a carry last week and scored, and that was the best game he's had
That I
in
will. Yeah, that's pretty
best
good
game he's
for
had in
him.
2 years. And it's like that's not good.
For
So
him,
it's
it's good.
for him, it's good, but it's not
Yeah.
good for fantasy. It's not good. He had one good game and he was on your bench.
Yeah.
And now you're going to start him again, and then they immediately cut Patrick Taylor. They've got no proper running game
No,
in
not
Green
until
Bay.
Aaron Jones comes back.
And then even then, it's going to be an uphill battle. They're going to have to figure out how to get Aaron. I'm looking forward to that because they're going to have to figure out how to get Aaron Jones a ton of touches. Because
Hmm.
what's happening is the defenses are figuring this out, and now they're just blitzing on every play,
Yeah.
and it's working. So why would you stop? It's what happened to them on Monday, and it's what happened to them the week prior. The
Hmm.
defenses are figuring out, okay, if you can't work the underneath of the field and you can't run the ball, you can't make a clean pocket, just going to blitz you on every play. Like I'm
Yeah.
playing Madden. And I'm not, it's not a full house blitz. I'm not sending everybody, but different looks, blitzing from different sides. Yeah, it's just what we're going to keep doing. So love is kind of off the radar. In fact, I've got most of the Packers on notice here until I can see some sort of coherent running game from them. So really hoping Matt Stafford's available in your league if you need some sort of streaming option for Guillotine. I'd be pretty interested in picking that up. But the quarterback is rough right now. Quarterback is rough. It's we poo-pooed the idea of you have to really reach on quarterback. You really have to do that, moving forward because there's like 4 guys that are good and everybody else is crap. You can still figure out how to make hay later in the draft. That argument is still true. You can do it. But this is 2 years in a row now where a lot of these later options just are not living up to expectations at all. Like you've got, Goff has been a nice success story with that. Geno Smith has been a nice success story with that. Russell Wilson, CJ Stroud, but a lot of the other guys, the poster children for wait on quarterback, your Dax, Deshaun Watson's,
Daniel Jones is going to
Daniel
get you rushing
Jones's,
yards.
none of that is working.
No.
So, yeah, the
No, he's getting his head taken off.
yeah.
Daniel Jones is.
So you've got that issue here in the background. And then we'll move into running back, but we do have a question. Rams or Jets? Rams or Jets? Rams have the better matchup and no James Conner. So I am probably going to go with the Rams. The Jets thing scares me because they're playing the Eagles.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're hoping that the Eagles continue to just kind of play down to their competition. I think that, if you have the Rams, you're feeling at least a little bit more confident about them going against the Cardinals, who
The division game, I get that can be a little weird, but no Connor.
No James. Yeah, that's
like
definitely
I'm probably gonna go that direction.
veering in your favor. Yeah.
Yeah. If I was really gonna try and push the boat out, I mean things that are available. If the Dolphins defense is still available, that's probably who I would target because they're still largely available because they're not good, but they're playing against Carolina. Kansas City's defense against Denver on Thursday night is somewhat attractive if that's available.
I haven't won since 2015, so that.
And the Falcons against Washington. The rest of these are probably too highly rostered. I would probably want any of that, but if none of that's available, then I would go back to playing the Rams. Okay, let's get into running back stuff here because running back is interesting. We actually get a little bit of relief here. So who are you looking for running back? We'll do traditional waivers first, as always.
So I saw this, and I just want to confirm that I'm seeing around 40% for roster percentage for Roschon Johnson still. Is that totally out of whack
that's about
on
right.
fantasy?
No, it's in the neighborhood. That's about right.
Okay. Him and Deontay Foreman, I would probably take a gamble on because I don't think they're just going to hand the reins over to Johnson as much as I would love to see that. I think they're going to continue to do the, each get a drive early on in the game and we'll go with a hot hand from there. And I mean, Deontay Foreman did pretty good filling in last year for Christian McCaffrey. So those are a couple that interest me, especially they're going against Minnesota. Minnesota's struggled defensively for what seems like ever since they made the NFC title game with Mike Zimmer. So Justice Hill is another one. I mean, again, you're trying to gamble, and they have kind of a tough matchup against Tennessee, but
Grody.
Yeah, but I think he could be in there while we're on the Tennessee matchup. Tajay Spears again getting plenty of the snaps, so I would definitely not shy away from him. Jeff Wilson Jr. with Devin Achane probably going to IR. I don't know if
he's going to go to IR, but he's definitely.
But he's definitely going to be out for a couple weeks. So again,
that was always the fear. That was
Yeah.
always the fear. He's just so little.
And speaking of little, let's wrap it up in a nice bow with Jaleel McLaughlin, another late round pick for the Broncos
Okay,
with their
the
running back.
McLaughlin thing is already way too overly rostered, so I'm not going to
Oh, it
spend a lot of
is?
time. Oh yeah,
Okay,
oh yeah.
gotcha.
That flew off the shelves. People blew all their fab budget for it,
Oh, wow.
and that's just the way the news goes on that. So both Perrine and McLaughlin are way out, and the other one is already practicing again anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
what's his name? Javonte Williams.
Williams.
So they're all that's going to be a mess.
Mm-hmm.
I'd stay out of that. For me, actually, the number one is Jeff Wilson because we've been talking about this since the preseason on 32 teams in 32 days. Jeff Wilson is something I would have picked up long ago. Been recommending it. You pick him up for $1 because you knew this day was coming. You didn't know HN was going to get hurt, but you knew this day was going to come. So this was one of those ones where if your league plays IR slots, you take him, you put him on your IR slot, you pick him up for $1 in fab, and you just wait because eventually this was going to always occur. But now with the HN injury, this gets thrust back into the forefront. He's had his window activated. He's going to start practicing. And they like Jeff Wilson. So they're never going to give Mostert the whole job. If they did, he'd probably get hurt anyway. So he would be my number one. Number two is actually, and I apologize if I don't get this exactly right, but I've only had to learn it in the last like 2 days. Uh, it's Amari Demercado, who got all the carries after James Conner went down, and I think I pronounced that correctly.
Mm-hmm.
But he's attractive to me because they've tried to get this going with Keontae Ingram and various other people. It doesn't work. They gave him the whole job after Conner went down, and it wouldn't shock me if he was a thing for the next 4 or 5 weeks. I wouldn't blow my whole fab out on it, but if you're rostering James Conner and you're desperate for options, I would put some money on this because depends what your other options are per se. But I would be highly interested in that because we've seen what Conner has been able to do, and it wouldn't be the first time that we've seen a Cardinals replacement running back come in and earn himself a job and start kicking people out to the street. Little man named David Johnson, years and years and years ago. Feel like I've seen this movie before. But yeah, he's number two for me on my list. Three is Tajay Spears. I'm gonna keep bringing this up until I don't have to anymore contractually because he's over 50%. Only at like 28%. That's not nearly enough. Should be rostered in close to 100% of leagues. That's a nice piece also, even if I don't have Henry, because I might play it myself. There's a chance Henry gets traded this month. And if he doesn't, I'll trade him to the Henry guy. That's kind of where I'm at. Like it's something like that. So he's number three for me. Number four would be the combination of the Bears guys you mentioned, Roshan and Donta. I mostly say that because I don't know what the split's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I could guess that it'll be Donta Foreman on first and second down, and then Roshan Johnson on third. But if they're splitting that job, I kind of don't care, which is how they wind up at four. Everybody I've put before that is splitting a job currently, but has a chance to actually get like way more than a 50-50 split. Whereas I don't really see a scenario where Donta Foreman and Roshan Johnson ever really split that job in a way that you would want. I don't really want Donta Foreman for just down 1 and 2. And if Roshan Johnson's just going to play third downs, I kind of don't care. So it's kind of where I'm at on that. Those are the ones that I would really be targeting here in the background. And then keep an eye on Chuba Hubbard. I don't think you necessarily have to roster Chuba Hubbard, but keep an eye on it. Just because if something serious does happen to Miles Sanders, he looks terrible. He's clearly playing through the groin. If they ever shut him down, Chuba Hubbard would get the whole job and he would be attractive. Even in negative game script games, they throw it enough to him. So he would be my fifth option. And then I'll give you a bonus, which is mostly just the idea that Jamal Williams is going to come back from IR here at some point.
Mm.
So just be aware of that in the background. That's kind of my list for things that are widely available. It's a little better than it has been, but it's still kind of slim pickings. What about if we? Oh wait, hold on. I would do the Jags. I would take the Jags over the Rams or the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
I would do that. Playing the Colts with a backup quarterback. I know it's Minshew and he's going to have a week to practice, and he knows the offense, but meh. I'd probably do that over the crapshoot of the other two defenses that you have. Fantasy Pros agrees with that, by the way. I just looked. So that's what I would do. Anyway, what do you think about guys that were likely chopped or things to target? Because this gets kind of interesting in the background.
Maybe the person who had Jonathan Taylor thought he was going to save their entire week, and he ended up getting axed. I think Ramondre Stevenson might be out there. He would definitely be something I'm interested in.
That's funny that you bring up Ramondre Stevenson because I don't know that I care.
Yeah.
The how many twos can you put up in a row before I have to give up? It's not that I suddenly think Ramondre Stevenson forgot how to play football. That's not what it is.
No, the
Patriots are in free
are.
fall, and I think everybody's going to get fired here pretty soon. We're getting to that point where people start getting fired.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's.
I don't care if you're a living legend. Everybody gets fired eventually.
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, how much time does that really buy you? And it's hard to say who looks worse right now between them and the Giants. I would say the Giants just because I've seen it in primetime more, but the Patriots are
I've seen them
just
both.
as
It's
bad.
not it's not a list you want to be on.
Yeah, no,
That's
exactly.
like what's worse,
So...
diphtheria or typhoid. Like it's not really a question. Like
they're having
yeah.
But
Would you rather have syphilis or gonorrhea? Like they're both treatable, but neither is good or fun.
Depends on your, outlook on it. But
getting it might have been fun, but dealing with the consequences certainly won't be.
And then James Conner, I guess, would be, the last name on the list, just because he did get hurt, and that might have got him axed.
So let's
pick him
stop
up,
there for a
stash
second.
him.
What would you be willing to spend on a James Conner pickup,
On a
knowing
hurt
that he's
James
going to miss at
Conner.
least 4 weeks? Knowing that he's going to miss 4 weeks. Because he's going on IR. They already confirmed that. So he could come back in week 10 at the earliest. So you're talking about 10. You could maybe get 5 games, maybe, of James Conner, assuming you don't get chopped between now and then.
For the simple fact that running back's a position where people get hurt a lot.
Yeah.
I would probably go 30, just to
Okay.
hopefully outbid someone who just does a throwaway 20 bid on it.
I was going to say
And
25.
that way,
I'm not putting more than 25. That's
no, I wouldn't go
hard
all out at all.
Hard out on 25. If I
Yeah.
can't win it for 25, I don't want to win it.
Mhm.
Someone else can deal with holding that on the end of their bench for the next 4 to 5 weeks. And by the way, this only applies if you're a good team.
Mhm. Yeah,
If
no,
you're a
if
good
you're
team who can afford this, go ahead.
Yeah.
Because then you're thinking for the future. Jonathan
you're
Taylor is
feeling
kind of the
flames,
same thing.
yeah, no.
Taylor's
absolutely.
kind of the same thing. I'd be willing to spend a little more on Taylor, but he was clearly on a snap count.
Mhm.
And now here's the problem. They signed him to that 3-year deal. My whole argument for this was he was going to come back and they were going to ask him to light the world on fire because they were going to try and get rid of him in the next month because that's when the trade deadline is. It's functionally Halloween. Well, then they signed him to a 3-year extension. So you're not doing that
now
anymore.
it's going to be Zach Moss that they're going to be trying to
now
get
why
rid
do I
of.
care? Why do I care?
Yeah.
My quarterback is already hurt. I'm playing with Gardner. We're going to try to win. That's what we do. But why do I need to rush Jonathan Taylor back when he's coming off the couch? Didn't have any preseason. I could put him on a pitch count for the next couple weeks. Zach Moss is playing great.
Mhm.
So it's kind of the same thing. It's like if I have a win now need for Taylor, I'm kind of not interested. Like, but if I have room for stashes, that's where I'll go to like 35. I don't know. How about you, Lance? What do you think? What's a reasonable number for something like that? If somebody wants to blow out their whole fab budget while he's thinking, I'm content to let them. That's kind of my point here. I'm good with it.
I'd probably again go 30 just because they could ride Zach Moss for the rest of the year. Like
even if they only do it for the next 3 to 4 weeks, it's still screwing you.
Exactly. So I mean, that's kind of the thing is like if they want to do it all the way up until the trade deadline, then you're getting Jonathan Taylor. It's essentially the Breece Hall situation with a better backup. So Breece Hall, they finally kind of let him loose this week, I
Look
don't
good.
know that that's in John Taylor's future
Well, they might.
anytime soon.
It's also a question of like how desperate would I need to be to make that to do that? Because if it's me, I want to wait and let him prove it to me 1 week, and then I'll play him after that.
Yeah.
So I'd have to be in like some sort of horrible injury and bye week situation. And if that's your situation, then do you? You know what I mean? If you got to spend some money to get something that's going to play, okay, that's a pretty good lottery ticket as far
Uh,
as lottery tickets go. But that's kind of what I feel like you're bidding on is a lottery ticket because the big ones are all probably, Austin Eckler probably got re-rostered if that team got cut.
mhm.
So that's probably gone by now, but he's supposed to be coming back this week in theory. We'll see if that happens. You have to wait till Monday night to figure it out. So that's super fun too. But then yeah, you've got McCaffrey, Bijan, Pollard, Etienne, Montgomery. None of that's going to be available
Mm.
unless something crazy has occurred. And then in this case, you don't need me to tell you to go bid on those guys. Like, I don't feel like we need to spend time on this show explaining that. You know what I mean? They're good. Jacobs, Walker, Kyron Williams. None of that's going to be available either. I know Kyron Williams had not a great game after, Cup came back. The problem is he's still getting all the usage. He played 90% of the snaps. There's no threat to his job. Kind of doesn't matter what he actually. It's like that's just what it is. Mostert just skyrocketed up now. Again, he's back to borderline top 10 running back. And then you start getting into the weird stuff where it's like Kamara probably not available, Henry possibly available, but this is where I want both Tennessee backs, not one.
Yeah, you got to get
Uh,
some insurance on that one.
yeah, and Henry's terrifying because he doesn't catch passes, as we know. So this has always been the fear with Henry is that if they ever couldn't get him his 25 carries a game, and or if they were ever not effective, that's the end of it. He's finally done. We're starting to get to that point. He's on the wrong side of 30. The Titans suck. There's a real chance Derrick Henry's not playing for the Titans here in the next couple weeks. Couldn't rule that out. You know what I mean? Somebody
Mhm.
might trade for Derrick Henry that's a contender. You know what I mean? And if I'm the Titans, I'm more than happy to give it up. Because what's the
Yeah,
point? We'll just
Tajay
roll
has looked
Spears.
pretty good, and
We ain't winning nothing anyway.
yeah.
If we're being truly honest with ourselves here, if we're the Titans. Brees Hall, the ship has sailed long ago. Mixon, no. Swift, Pacheco, no. But we finally get to the one that I've had circled since the beginning, and I'm surprised that you didn't bring it up because it's James Cook. James Cook had a
Mm,
terrible week in London. The Bills looked like crap except for a half of the fourth quarter when they
yeah.
finally start. And that mostly was Josh Allen putting them on his back and running them into some sort of competitive range. Jet lag's a real thing. They're not playing in London every week.
Like
It's
the Jags.
Cook has, well, they should just move there. The
Yeah.
league, if it had its way, they would do that.
Would.
Cook has had a great season to this point. His usage is not really under threat. He's going to just get that 75% of the snaps. He had one bad game. If somebody got
Mhm.
chopped over it, this is where I'm willing to spend.
Oh yeah.
I'm willing to put up a decent number on this. $100. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Like that's an area where I'm looking to spend money and
Yeah.
not save money. So he was my number one as far as like guillotine, things that might be available, things that might have got you killed. Ramondre, I'm terrified of it. I'm probably going to let somebody else bid on it. And then the other ones that I had circled were actually, it's worth checking on Rashad White just because he was on bye last week. And if that
Mhm.
team took an unfortunate tumble, I want a lot of Rashad White shares because when he's actually playing, there's no threat to his job either. And his usage is insane. And they're throwing dump offs to him. It's exactly what I look for in a PPR running back. And he's finally kind of having his time. And then the other one that I wanted to discuss with you is Brian Robinson Jr.
Mm.
Great start to the season. We've seen what happens when the Commanders are in positive game script. He gets a lot of carries. He's been very efficient with them. The problem is when they start losing. They start losing, they get down, and then it's Antonio Gibson on the field the whole time. Antonio Gibson kind of looks like crap, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. He was out there all night on Thursday when they were getting blitzed by the Bears, and he had 10 fantasy points. And given the state of running back right now, I hate to tell you, but if you're getting 10 fantasy points regularly, you're borderline an RB2. That's how effed up the running back is right now. Like 10 points should be like flex running back most years, like maybe a
Mm-hmm.
spot starter. No, not this year. That's like
Nope.
if you can get double digits, you're probably playing. Uh, and then the other one. So I was curious, would you be interested in some Brian Robinson, or do you want to kind of just stay away from that, given how the Commanders have been playing recently?
I'd still buy into it. I'm not, going all in for that
I'm not doing that
because
either.
I think what you see.
$50 maximum for me. I'll put 50
Yeah, I
bucks.
can't say I'd go any higher than that. I mean, you kind of see what Bieniemy did when he was with the Chiefs of how they like to shuffle through running backs. They had Jared McKinnon in there. They started to use Pacheco. They had Clyde Edwards-Helaire occasionally. So, I mean, if Brian Robinson can get the workload he was getting in the early weeks, great. If the game starts to get out of control, though, I don't know that they're gonna continue to keep him on field.
That's
So,
been the problem. So,
yeah.
and then I had one other name, which because the rest of it is all pretty much point and shoot, and this is how it
Hmm.
gets during the buys, unfortunately. But the one that I would look at here that might be available is actually Miles Sanders.
Hmm.
He's going to limp his way through the year, and you can't really feel confident about starting him right now. But he was on a good stretch before the groin. So if I could get Miles Sanders, if he cratered somebody's team and I didn't need a running back to start, I'll put $20 up on Miles Sanders, throw him on the end of my bench, and see where it goes. But only if I'm a good team and I can hold on to him. Because you're not playing him right now. You're going to have to make him prove it to you at some point. But the groin is really the issue, but the groin isn't like a season-ending injury. It should be okay. It should work itself out eventually. You're just going to have to be patient. So you're kind of looking at lottery tickets. And then I have one other one for you. What do you do with Zach Charbonnet?
Same thing you do with JSN. I mean, get rid of him. Let him be someone else's headache because
Really interesting.
Kenneth Walker isn't slowing down. And I feel if their offense is running how they want to, they're going to run it through Kenneth Walker.
Really, you're not concerned about the fact that Kenneth Walker's snap percentage has eroded every single week this year to the
I
point where he was under 60% of snaps the last 2 weeks, seeding those snaps directly to Zach Charbonnet. You're not worried about that?
but what has Zach Charbonnet done with them though?
Well, we'll look at that actually, because he's actually been somewhat efficient here. As I'm sure you've learned by now, Lance, I don't ask you fair questions. I ask you questions that are inherently loaded and unfair. Uh, from a point total, admittedly, it hasn't been amaze
Hmm.
balls yet. He's coming off 3 5s in a row.
Right.
But the issue here is if you're looking at his yards per attempt over the last for the season, you are looking at he's averaging right at 5 yards per attempt. That's why he keeps getting more snaps. Is because he's
Hmm.
being incredibly efficient with the football. See,
Okay.
my concern is that by the end of the year, that Kenneth Walker Zach Charbonnet job is a 50-50 split. Tell me, and then you go look at the life and times of Pete Carroll and the crazy crap I've seen that man do over the years.
He's done some wild stuff. I'm still in denial. I'm still Team Ken. Team Ken all day. And he's been crazy good with it. And the thing about Zach Charbonnet is pretty much at this point, if he's not catching passes, if he's not digging into that specific role, I don't really care.
Well, let's look at that
Is
because his targets have gone up every single week as well, to where he's averaging about 3 targets in each of the last 3 games. That's targets. It's not
mhm,
amazing yet, but it's
not
trending the right
catches,
direction.
but targets. So I
Well, yeah,
mean,
but it's only 3, but still, it's
yeah.
trending the right direction.
No, if it can get to a bubble where it's playable,
No,
then I'll
my
consider.
point to you is this: I think it will
Yeah.
be playable at some point, but what I'm more interested
Mhm.
in is one of two strategy plays, and this matters maybe slightly less for Guillotine, but it would apply in either scenario. If I have Ken Walker and I'm in Guillotine, I want Zach Charbonnet, stick him on the end of my bench because based on what that's telling me,
Mhm.
Zach Charbonnet, if something was to happen to Ken Walker like it did last year, Zach Charbonnet is top 20 running back easily. Given the state of running back, If he's getting 70% of the snaps for the Seahawks, that's top 20. That's it. It's that simple. The other thing is this, and this matters maybe a little less for Guillotine because you don't do trades. Right now, if I roster Walker in a non-Guillotine, I want him because I don't want to have to pay the idiotic price tag that I'm going to have to hold my handcuff for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other issue is this. Right now, this is still cheap. If Ken Walker does get hurt, let's say Ken Walker goes out next week and we knock on wood and we make sure that we don't jinx anybody or at least try not to. But something happens to Ken Walker next week and he's going to miss the next. He's got the James Conner situation. He's going to miss the next 4 games. They're going to put him on IR. What do you think the Zach Charbonnet price tag is in any format? Because I would argue it's 75% of your fab.
Yeah, no, there's going to be someone who drops their entire fab on it for whatever reason that people do that.
Point.
But
it's my point. This is right now something that could be done pretty inexpensively.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do it.
If I had Ken Walker, I would do it. Aside from that, I would
want him if I don't, because then I'm going to just absolutely rake the guy with Ken Walker over the coals. I'm just going to rake him. Or it's my problem now, and then I have a starting top 20 running back. See what I'm saying? You win either way. Is kind of my argument with this. There's no what is the worst case scenario? He's your 6th running back and you stack him on the end of your bench and it never pans out, and then you cut him in at some point because you don't need him for your playoff roster. That's the worst case scenario here. Every other scenario is insanely profitable. So that's why I'm looking at Zach Charbonnet, and he's one of the guys I have circled where it's it's probably about time to be looking at that. Because, like I said, in 2 weeks, we're going to be halfway through the year.
Yeah.
So we're getting to that point where some of these prospects I'm ready to just ditch. And there are other people that I've been waiting on that it's now is kind of the time we want to start looking at some of this stuff. We're getting to that time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you really need to roster some of these guys that people are hanging on to? There's certain guys I'm pulling it up here. Do you really need to roster Dalvin Cook? No. Do you need that? Is that a thing you need? Do you need to be rostering Tony Jones Jr.?
Oh God. Yeah. If you're still doing that, please stop.
Do you need to be rostering Zeke? These are all guys that are ahead of Zach Charbonnet, by the way.
Yeah.
This is my point to you.
Yeah.
Do you need to be rostering some of this? Because if you don't, I'm not seeing the point of I'm not seeing the point of continuing some of this. If I'm being perfectly honest here, there's just some of these guys that people are hanging on to that I'm I think you could just be done.
No, there definitely is. Don't need to worry about it.
Matt Breida can go bye-bye as soon as Saquon's back. Don't need that anymore.
He can go right now.
I'd be fine with that too. I'm getting ready to cut Jared McKinnon. What? He had one good game, and they're just giving the ball to Isaiah Pacheco like crazy. That one I'm less certain about, but
yeah, just because of how they move and shift throughout the season.
Well, and the buys. The buys are making this difficult. But there's a lot of guys that are being heavily rostered, especially from the beginning of the year. And I'm just looking at some of this list, and I'm
if Kadarius Toney is still rostered by any amount.
I'm just looking at running backs. I didn't even get into wide receivers. There's other Isaiah Hodgins. You can cut Isaiah Hodgins right now. You can cut any one of the Giants that isn't named Wan'Dale Robinson. If you want to ride it out with Darren Waller, go. No, I don't want that either.
Yeah.
If you want to ride it out with Darren Waller because it's tight end, I don't care. Whatever.
Yeah,
tight end doesn't matter. But you could cut Josh Kelly. Go ahead.
He hasn't been.
You could cut CEH. There's so many cuts. And that's why I'm saying Charbonnet needs to be rostered in a lot more leagues than what he's being rostered in at this point, given what I'm watching people hold.
There's still potential. Yeah, no, there's definitely still potential there.
It's just upside. It's pure upside.
Yeah.
What's the upside for Dalvin Cook? I dare you to come up with an answer to that question that isn't sarcastic.
Knock on wood, Brees Hall gets hurt, and I mean, do you see more carries going Michael Carter's way or Dalvin Cook?
Even if it was, he's been so terribly inefficient. Why do I want the guy that even if he got 15 carries a game, he was averaging 2 yards a carry?
Because he might fall in the end zone once.
Even with that, there are better names. Even with that, there are better names that I would rather hold on to. You could cut Kendrick Bourne. You could cut Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah, anyone
you could
not named
cut
Hunter Henry.
You could cut anyone not named Hunter Henry, and then I wouldn't even necessarily blame you if you did cut Hunter Henry, because it's tight end, and you could figure out another option. And then and then he's coming off that lovely 0. And then like Ramondre is probably not cuttable, but it's not startable. So that's a fun little puzzle that you get to deal with in the background. There's just a lot of players that people are still holding on to. You can cut Alan Lazard. Like there's just so many things that could be cut. And I'm looking at like Tajay Spears not even being barely being 25% rostered, and Zach Charbonnet being like 30. And it's like, no. These are things that should be rostered at this time coming up in the next 2 weeks. These are things that should be rostered at well over 50%. Do it now while it's cheap, or don't come crying to me when it's $11 billion later on and you're kicking yourself like, oh, I probably should have done that. Like, what is Juju Smith doing for you right now on your team? Like, I'd love to know. You really need those 4 points? Zach Charbonnet scores more points than that, and you were just complaining about it. About how he's not involved enough. He's averaging 5 points a week. Like it's already an upgrade.
I'm not after Juju either. That is
I'm
one
just,
that's since
I'm just
Pittsburgh
illustrating my point here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm interested in that. And then we already started talking about wide receiver with this lovely little conversation. So let's pivot into wide receiver and let's go through it. Who do you like?
Josh Downs is a name that
Okay, Josh Downs was going to be on my list too. So we'll
more and
agree
more
on
every
that
single
one, I'm
week,
sure.
and especially with Gardner Minshew coming in, he targeted him a lot more than
He was already getting targeted a lot in that game before.
Yeah.
That it's the way that game was working. But you're not wrong. I completely agree. The big winners out of that, real quick, Michael Pittman and Josh Downs.
Yeah.
They win with Minshew. They're the big winners with the Minshew thing, because in the games where Minshew's played, Michael Pittman gets a ton of work. And so does Josh Downs. I know they didn't have Jonathan Taylor in those games, but I have a feeling we're going to see those guys are going to do probably, I don't know if they'll both get 10 targets, but it wouldn't shock me if together they had 20 targets.
Really no, they're definitely going to combine for at least in the mid-teen range for sure. Probably 20, if they each have a good week. But
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm with you on the Downs thing, and Downs is widely available.
No, he definitely is. So that's one that, if you're paying attention to, I get it's an Indianapolis receiver and they're not, crazy attractive, but, still.
Michael
you
Pittman,
can't
except
ignore.
for last week, has been having a decent year.
Yeah.
He's playing to where I had him ranked and not where he was in the ECR, because people are like, Michael Pittman, bad quarterback play. I'm like, Michael Pittman was the wide receiver 21 for the year in PPR in 2021 with Phillip Rivers as his quarterback. And then last year, he was the wide receiver 22 with Matt Ryan as his quarterback. And he was rated coming into the season in the consensus in the ECR in the 30s. And I'm like, how could it be possible for Anthony Richardson to be worse than any of that? And that's why people are surprised, because Michael Pittman's having a better year than they thought was possible. And I'm like, no, he's in the 20s. That's about where I had him. Like, that's what he does. He's on that list to me as like classic vintage Allen Robinson. Like Allen Robinson from years gone by, where it's like he's in his prime and he's got no quarterback play. Terry McLaurin is another example of that, of like supremely talented wide receiver, horribly being held back by completely useless quarterback play.
Abysmal quarterback, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Josh Downs, that's a good one. He was actually my number one. He was number one.
Honestly, I'd probably put him there just because, a lot of the other names I have down here, they're either I'm a little shaky on them, or they're
They're a
more
little. They're a little.
investments to
I
wait till
almost.
later.
I like the almost Freudian slip there. They're a little bit
Yeah.
poo. But who's behind Downs then? Who's up next?
um, I saw Johnston at a 38.3%
Yeah,
on fantasy.
Johnston's still largely available if you want to go the Johnston route.
Yeah, and that's one where again, I think we talked about this last week. I think Palmer's gonna still get a decent amount of the work, but
It's 2 weeks.
Johnston's creeping up there with his, snap counts and he's one where I think towards the end of the year he could be coming in full swing. I'm not buying the KJ Osborne thing.
Okay.
I thought he was gonna, you know, give Addison a lot tougher of time coming in there and taking some
No, I
work.
think we've already
And
realized that Addison is
yeah, he's
like
a
a
real
real
deal.
NFL player.
And
He's the truth. Like
Osborne's regressed from what he's been in years past. Like
you can
he's just
regress from. I guess you could regress from bad to terrible.
that's kind of where he's been. I mean, he's
Yeah,
dropping the ball, he's fumbling. Like he is, he is not helping this offense in any way,
I
shape, or
love the little
form. And
temper
it's
tantrums when the ball hits him right in the hands and then he drops it and then he starts like hitting himself in the head. And I'm like, that looks good.
yeah,
That looks
it's like, yeah, let's
inspires a lot of confidence.
um after that, I mean, if
Well,
you're
after that, it gets
looking,
super ugly.
I mean, yeah, if you're looking for the wide receiver that's probably going to have the best chemistry with Mahomes, it's going to be Rashid Rice. Um,
Rashi.
Rashid
No,
Rice.
Rashi. There's no D.
Oh, there isn't?
No, it's Rashee.
Oh, I thought that was a typo. My
No, that's not a typo. That's
bad.
literally how he spells his name.
Oh, okay. Um, and then from there, I don't know if Robert Woods is still.
Robert Woods is hugely available. The problem with Robert Woods is that he's 31.
That's true. But I mean,
That's the real underlying problem with Robert Woods.
if Tank Dell is out, you might get a little bit more out of him,
I'll
you
tell you
know?
why it's interesting. He was averaging 6 targets a game for the season with Tank Dell playing.
Hmm.
That's why it's interesting. Because
Yeah.
if he gets to 10 targets a game,
Like, even though he is 31, he's
it's
bound to
ugly as
be.
hell and don't watch it.
Yeah.
But he's going to be rostered
Yeah. It's
because
serviceable, is really where it's
it's
at.
so ugly. But
Yeah.
it's so ugly. But he's going to be out there. And he'll
Hmm.
be if he gets 10 targets a game. That's just how fantasy football works.
Yeah.
It's opportunity based. So he'll. I wouldn't be like holding my breath. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But yeah, he'd be rosterable for sure. He's already borderline rosterable, so yeah, he would have to move up uh if that's going on. It's funny that you mentioned Robert Woods because I had him on my list as well. We've had a couple overlapping. For me, it was Josh Downs as number one. Number two is Josh Reynolds, the other Josh, because Josh Reynolds just keeps showing up, and until he was on this pace last year before he got hurt and missed the back
Hmm.
half of the year with his knee being all messed up. I've warmed up to Josh Reynolds over the last like 3 years. When he came into the league, I was not a fan. And he's proven to me that he's better than just a guy. He's actually like pretty good. He's
Yeah.
more of a polished player than I thought he would ever be. And they look for him. So Josh Reynolds with Amon-Ra St. Brown being a little nicked up, and even with Amon-Ra playing, he was
Hmm.
having a pretty good year. So I'm interested in some Reynolds. Reynolds would be number two. He's still available in like 60% of leagues. He's a good one to have for the buys as your guys start taking the week off. I would be looking at that. He was my number two. Uh, Number three is Quentin Johnson, and I don't like it very much. And I'm probably not going to end up winning the bidding on that because I'm going to put it in for like $1 or
Yeah.
$2 or $5, and then everybody's going to outbid me, and I don't care because I'm not a big fan. I'm not totally sold on this. It's more of a function of you got to give it some kind of credence because he's going to be out there at this point. But I'm not holding my breath. I would much rather
Hmm.
either of the Joshes. But sure, Quentin Johnson would be third, and then uh, four is Marvin Mims. because at some point
Oh,
they're just going to have to give up on the idea that any of this matters. And I'm actually genuinely serious when I tell you, I think a number of those players that are currently playing for the Broncos are going to get traded.
yeah.
I think there's a very real chance Jerry Jeudy's gone
Could be a
coming up
Panther.
here.
I mean, they're looking for a wide
Whoever,
receiver.
a Panther, a Patriot. That they didn't want to give him up in the preseason because they wanted
First round pick,
they
I
wanted
think
a
it
first
was.
round pick.
Yeah.
Good luck with that. Yeah, good luck with that. And they wanted a second round pick for Cortland Sutton. It's good luck with that too. But it wouldn't shock me at this point if they're more willing to go back to the table and talk deal, because
Mhm.
that team is in total free fall. It's in disarray. You got to do something. And I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to fire Sean Payton? I mean, that would be funny to me. I would find that hilarious, but
It looks almost as bad as Urban Meyer. Now, I'm not going to put it in
no,
the,
no, no. We
as
don't
bad
talk
as
about
Urban
Urban Meyer.
Meyer,
We don't
but
talk about Urban Meyer. Nothing is as bad as Urban Meyer.
nothing
It
is as bad, but
it
it
looks
looks
it looks
just,
this looks more like
you
Nathaniel
know,
Hackett. It looks like Nathaniel Hackett never left town. The only difference is they're not taking stupid delay of game penalties and screwing up the snap count and the clock. But the play calling looks the same. It's
mhm.
just the word I use for it is constipated. It's
Yeah.
just this very tentative play. It's I don't want to throw the ball deep. Oh my God, what happens if we do this? And it's like, just cut it loose, man. Just cut it loose. Just run. Like run the
Mhm.
team. Like stop with this stupid crap. And Peyton in his own press conference was saying, "Yeah, we got too tentative last week, and it cost us the game. And you lost to the Jets, man. You don't come back from that. Like that's not
Well, especially after he opened his mouth,
yeah. So
and said everything he said and then
yeah. So
backed
then you got
none of it up.
then you get crapped on. So here's my
Yeah.
thing. The reason why I've got Mims a little higher than other people. I firmly believe that some of these guys, the very strong possibility they're going to be gone here in the next couple weeks. Because you got to do something, and that team ain't winning nothing anyway.
Right.
And you already moved up to get Mims, and you've seen what he's been able to do on this very limited snap count. And
Mhm.
Russell Wilson clearly seems to like throwing to him.
Oh, yeah.
Russell Wilson has always needed his Tyler Lockett. That's what Mims is. Run down the
Mhm.
field with your arm up, and I'm just going to throw it to you. And if you
Doug
catch it, great.
Baldwin,
And if
Tyler
you don't,
Lockett.
yeah,
Yeah.
Lockett is more real because Doug Baldwin also worked the middle to the intermediate stuff, and Mims doesn't really do that yet. Maybe
Oh,
one
yeah.
day he will. But the way that that's going to work is, and to compare it to like a Saints team, they're going to use like Mims as kind of like a lesser Chris Olave, and they're going to
Mhm.
use they would use Cortland Sutton
Sutton
as
as a
Michael
Michael
Thomas, which is what they've
Thomas.
already been doing.
Yeah.
And they need Greg Dulcich back to be Adam Troutman because Adam Troutman sucks at being Adam Troutman. And that's the reality of it. And I say that as somebody who also graduated from University of Dayton. I'm sorry, Adam. I'm sorry, but you're playing like crap, and you had a really bad game last week, and it frustrated me. And it's one of those deals where who gets penalties called on them playing tight end? You're out of your mind. So Mims was my fourth guy because I believe better days are ahead because they almost kind of have to be. And Mims is one that I'm kind of willing to hold on to and wait for the inevitable house cleaning that I think is coming here. And then also,
Mm,
there's also the idea that even if they don't fire everybody and do whatever, well, you ain't winning shit anyway, so you might as well just see what you have in the rookie.
Positive game stripped. I mean,
Positive game script for Mims, not for the Broncos winning games.
well, no, no.
Yeah, that game script doesn't exist anymore. That's just pain and sadness. Um, and then beyond that, it gets really horribly nasty, ugly. Because number 5 would be KJ Osborne, and I'm not Jason. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to roster KJ Osborne. Jason would tell you to do that. That's a Jason move. Um, Jason likes KJ Osborne. I could care less.
I
Like
liked him
it's
going into this year, and after what I've seen, I'm out.
the one thing that you can hang your hat on with KJ Osborne, which is why he even makes the list, is 9 targets. He got 50 yards on 9 targets. Woo! That's part of why I temper my expectations with Robert Woods. Love Bobby Trees. Big fan from his younger years when he was the number 2 on the Rams and he was looking like a world beater.
Mm.
Basically playing wide receiver and running back. I loved it. Fun to watch and a great football player. At 31, he's getting those targets, man, but that doesn't hit the same the way
No.
that it used to because he's slower and he's much more of an injury risk. And
Hmm.
it's kind of how I feel about KJ Osborne. It's like, yeah, you got 9 targets, so you deserve to be rostered, but
Do you really?
You kind of do just by the nature of
Yeah.
how fantasy football works. But the problem is five of 9 for 50 yards is a 10, and that's like okay, you can get a bench spot. But what's the scenario where I want to start you?
Yeah.
I don't like that. Uh, I think the big winner is Hawkinson and Addison. Those are the winners of that particular issue because as we'll get into here in a moment, there's been some pretty big shakeups. And then after that, it's the Robert Woodses of the world. Sure, if that's what you want to do. Rashid Shaheed possibly, but even I'm losing interest in that because they're just not taking the deep shots the way that I was hoping with Carr last week they might take a few more deep shots. They didn't. Uh, and then all the Green Bay guys that everybody's been so excited about as prospects. Cool your jets on that because until they can learn to run the ball, it's just all ugly.
Yeah.
And it's just it's there's nothing really that you really want
Hmm.
past the 5 guys I mentioned, and then maybe Robert Woods would be 6. And then it's like you get all excited about Michael Wilson, and then he immediately lets you down. Uh, there's all these other guys that I see people recommending, like Curtis Samuel. It's like I'm not buying into that. Not buying into the Curtis Samuel thing. If the Commanders have their way about it, they're not throwing enough for Curtis Samuel to matter.
No.
Zay Jones is just a constant knee injury waiting to happen. Rashi Rice is nearly consistent enough. Mingo is same problem, bad team, not consistent enough. It's just all there's 5 guys that I'm interested in, and then Robert Woods is my dark horse if Tank Dell is going to miss time, and then beyond that, it's not great, man. It's not great. So I think what we should
There's one more
what's that?
absolute in need of a miracle in, you know, for all the marbles. If you really need someone and for whatever reason you don't get lucky on waivers, Cedric Wilson might be a name if
Oh
Tyreek Hill
God,
is hurt. I
you
mean,
have to be so desperate.
yeah, that's kind of why I said if you are really
You
desperate,
have to be
try that.
really, really, really desperate
It's a Miami
for real.
offense. They've been able to spread it out and, kind of make some hay with that. So that's the only reason. If it wasn't the Miami offense, there's no way I'd recommend it, but, just for that.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's talk about Guillotine. We'll focus on Guillotine here in the background. Um, you've got the return of Cooper Cup. Immediately they traded Van Jefferson, which I found hilarious. God, that made me laugh. Oh, it was phenomenal. Took like 2 days, and they were like, "Get out of here! I don't care anymore." Uh, for all those people who were worried that Puka would be completely useless, Puka not gonna do what he was doing, but he'll be fine.
Mm,
He'll still be startable. So you're fine with that. The rumors of his death were exaggerated, it turns out. The big news was Justin Jefferson's officially going to go on the IR. That's why we spent so much time talking about Vikings. The big winner for that for me is Hawkinson and Addison. Those are the 2 little C increased targets. Osborne becomes rosterable, I guess. With his 9 targets, 5 for 9. Maybe he can pull his head out of his what and start playing a little better. That would make me feel better about that whole thing. But it's hard for me to get excited about that given how inefficient he's been with what he's already been getting.
mm-hmm.
Whereas Addison, I think, just moves up. The problem with that is he's probably going to start seeing better coverage. So we'll see if he's ready for that at this point in his career.
Yeah,
And then
the only
there's
one I feel confident about is Hawkinson and
yeah,
that,
Hawkinson.
but
Hawkinson is the one that for sure you'll know he's going to see some additional targets and stuff.
mm,
That's going to happen. But as far as things that are like available, Justin Jefferson, even with him going on IR, I can't believe anybody would cut him in their guillotine league.
no. I
If he
mean,
got
maybe,
shopped, if
yeah.
he got shopped because of it, that's a different thing.
Mm,
And the question that I have for you is he's going on IR. He can't come back until effectively week 10. So you get 4 games with Jefferson and then maybe the playoffs, assuming you're going to make the playoffs. What is an appropriate level bid for that? I genuinely don't know.
I want to say 100, but as it comes out of my mouth, I know it's wrong.
It's like,
But
how much fab do I have? Almost becomes the question. Where am I at this
it's
point in the
so
year?
subjective because it's how is your team? If your
Right.
team is good enough where you can afford to have him on your bench and then, you know, essentially be swinging at full force once he comes back, great. But if you're doing that as a desperation move, like,
No, that's
no, that's
pointless.
not going
This
to help
only
you.
applies to people that are
Yeah.
like really good team, good depth,
Hmm.
don't need to do much. If that's your team, I sort of get spending the $100,
Yeah.
especially
I go 100.
if you have additional fab laying around, especially,
Yeah.
I would do it because if you had a good team and you just didn't need to make a lot of claims and you're
Hmm.
ahead of the game right now at this point of the year, a third of the way into the season, yeah, go ahead, splash the cash on the dash. If
Yeah.
you can wait for it, because at that point you'll be getting, that's one of the rare things that it's like, no, that's actually worth doing
Yeah.
because you don't need him. It's sort of like a luxury.
Hmm.
But if you do get him back at Justin Jefferson's strength, you could probably win. So
Oh,
that's one of those
yeah.
moves where I would put up a little bit more. I'd be willing to spend some additional money on that rather than hold that money back for weeks like 13, 12, 13, 14, like I like to do, and
Hmm.
then really deploy capital. 'Cause that's when the good teams are getting chopped. You know what I mean? The really
Hmm.
good teams get chopped around there, and it's like, no, look at all the good toys on here. I'm just going to help myself. That's also when your opponents start running out of money. So you control the bidding at that point. This is one of those rare times where it's like, nah, this is good enough that I might be willing to like deploy some capital here to
Hmm.
to make that happen. So that's the biggest one that if he got chopped would be out there. If that team didn't get chopped, you're kind of waiting for them to get chopped potentially. You'd have to just wait and see if that's going to apply to you in your situation. But because beyond that, all the other big names are going to probably be staying right where they are, and you don't need us to tell you to put in claims on Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen,
Devontae
Devontae
Adams.
Adams, AJ
Yeah.
Brown. None of that. None of the top 10. It's like if they're available, great. Uh, if DJ Moore was available, what would you put up for DJ Moore coming off that huge game? He hasn't done a whole lot prior to that, but coming off that huge game, I can tell you he's rated in the top 12 for this week for the opening rankings in the ECR, which is crazy to me coming off one game, but that's what it is.
I go probably 45 and I could be talked into 50.
Yeah, I might just put a nice round 50 on it and
Hmm.
see what I could get. The problem here is I'm not totally sold on this long term.
No, I'm holding my breath too. It's
Because yeah, you're looking at some weird numbers here. But the
mm,
last 2 weeks have been good. The last two
yeah,
weeks have definitely been good.
and
Uh,
them going against the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings defense has not looked any better this year. So I
yeah, that's
mean,
that's helpful for the short term, but I just mean long
yeah.
term. They really do seem to be trying to figure it out with him. So
Hmm.
I would put a real bid on DJ Moore if he was still available. Because
Absolutely.
people,
Yeah.
but the problem is that it's going to be expensive because I could see somebody blowing a lot of money. Not willing
Hmm.
to empty my bank account for it though.
No,
Not just yet. I'm a little too risk averse for that.
not off
Uh,
one game.
yeah. If Devonta Smith is out there, I don't know what to tell you because that team is just it's like it's kind of like the Bills or the 49ers where it's like there's just going to be weeks where he's just not going to do a whole lot. Similar to Goddard, there's just going to be weeks where AJ Brown just gets the lion's share, or it's going to be Brown and Goddard, or it'll be Brown and Smith, and it's hard to know. With the exception of Brown, it's just going to be hard to know like who to really trust week in week out on that team. Swift also seems to get his at this point, but
Yeah,
the rest of it, I'm a little nervous about Devonta Smith. I'd be willing to bid on it just because
it's Devonta
he's
Smith.
he's out there, he's playing for a good team, but I don't know if I'm
Hmm.
willing to spend a lot of money on that. Um, but yeah, it's just wide receiver is tough in this regard because it's just kind of a mess. And then it doesn't really start to get like hard until you start getting almost into like the 30s. Because it's like the top 30 or so wide receivers I mean, they're all going to be rostered, and they should all be rostered, even in your Guillotine League. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's really nobody who gets rated in the top 30. So you're mostly looking at guys that are like available outside the top 30 to see if they could pull their way back in. For me, it starts around like 32, 33. It starts with guys like Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Gabe Davis, Drake London, Michael Thomas, now Tutu Atwell, Tank Dell because of the injury. You know, it's you start getting into there where it's like these are all now questions.
Mhm.
Jahan Dotson. These are all questions now that I have that it's going to go on a case by case basis. And there's nobody on that list that I just rattled off that I feel strongly about. I probably wouldn't put more than $10 to $15 on any single one of those guys.
Yeah, I'm about the same. I mean, you doesn't really get me too excited, but at least
If you need
do
a
your due
body, if
diligence.
you need
Yeah.
a body, they're bodies. Like
Yeah.
because yeah, it's Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy are both in that weird mix now where they're kind of just flexes
Hmm.
because they could easily get you 10 points, but the idea that they're going to get you 20 is kind of off the table, at least for the foreseeable future. Gabe Davis is a 2 or it's 20. There's no in between. And there's not enough 20s in there for my liking. Drake
No,
London either finds the end zone or it's a 5.
they're
Uh,
not.
Michael
They're not
Thomas is
throwing
broadly the
much.
same thing. Tutu Atwell died the minute that Puka showed up and Cooper Kupp came back because they can't support 3 wide receivers on that team. So he's the
Uh,
one who takes the big hit.
I'm willing to give that a little bit more time yet.
All right. I'm not. I'm prepared to get ready to move along with Tutu Atwell. But I'd have to know what your other options are. I'm not just going to cut him for no reason, obviously.
No.
And I'm not going to cut him for KJ Osborne either. That would be stupid. But Tank Dell injury now. We'll have to see when he comes back and what that's going to look like post injury. One of the ones that's interesting short term, if you do need a short term band aid, is Tyler Boyd. We talked about that last week, and it was pretty much as advertised. We've seen that before.
Hmm.
When Tyler Boyd doesn't need to be the wide receiver one on the team, and there's no T. Higgins, and he can just be like an ancillary player, he's pretty good. I've been doing this so long that I remember the conversation from years ago about is Tyler Boyd a wide receiver one? And it's like, no, the answer to that is no, honey. He's absolutely not, and he never will be. And stop asking. And
Before they got T. Higgins out, and before they had AJ, or I mean, towards the end of AJ Green, he was like, I could get excited about Tyler Boyd
well,
a
and
couple
then
years ago.
then AJ
But
Green became old, and then the defenses realized they didn't have to respect him anymore, and then they started actually playing defense against Tyler Boyd, and then Tyler Boyd folded like the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl.
he had a good year when AJ Green was hurt.
He had
He did
half
have
of
a
the he had half of a decent season, and then he
he had
rode that for 2 years in fantasy football circles. We made shirts about this. This has
ugh.
been going on for a long time. But Tyler Boyd is fine in his current role and usage thing with no T.
Mhm.
Higgins if he's going to be playing as the starting slot. And then my only other one that I'd be interested in for about $10 is Wan'Dale Robinson. The only startable giant for me, not named Saquon. It's not sexy, but I'm willing to see where it goes.
I'm not. I I just ugh, I can't bring myself to roster anyone from that team
He's the only
aside from
one because
Saquon.
his usage, excuse me, his usage keeps going up. And
Hmm.
when they can actually establish some sort of pocket,
Well,
he's the
that's
beneficiary of it.
if
That's when it just depends on what team they're playing. There are certain weeks
mm,
where this will not matter, but there's a reason
mhm.
Wan'Dale Robinson's rostership percentage keeps climbing up in the background.
Yeah, they like to put him in motion, and they.
He's the number one wide receiver on that team. I know that doesn't mean a
Yeah.
whole lot, but like it's all right. Well, we beat that to death anyway. Let's talk about tight end, and then let's go eat dinner. Tight end. I hate tight end. I say this multiple times a week. Who do you like? To the extent that there's anyone. A lot of crap.
Musgrave is a name that is out there. I liked
It
him a lot
doesn't help you
better
this
going
week. So you're
into.
talking about for the Hall.
Yeah.
He's on
No,
bye.
for the what's that?
He's on bye, so I assume you mean for the Hall.
Yeah, no, for the Hall.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
I'd
you
argue with you
know,
about this, but tight end is a wasteland, so it's hard to argue.
Logan Thomas.
Logan Thomas is on my list.
Yeah, and I don't like it, but
Get it
I
while it
mean,
lasts, baby, because it's not going to last long. But when he's out there, holy crap.
yeah. What, I think he played 80% of the snaps this past
Somebody
week,
looks at him wrong
so
and he's going to be right back in that concussion protocol because we've seen that a million times. And I hate to be an a-hole about it. That's what it is. Hate to be an a-hole about this, but that's where we're at. But when he
Yeah.
is not in the concussion protocol and playing for the Commanders, holy crap.
Hmm. No, and I mean you've seen Bieniemy feature a tight end in his offenses, so you know that
Yeah,
there's
there's this
that.
guy named Travis Kelce who's the only tight end that matters. Yeah, I've
It's
seen that
it's
before.
pretty good.
Yeah, he's the only tight
Um,
end that matters. Nobody else matters. It's all the same after that. It's all
Dalton
guessing.
Schultz might have dropped below
Oh, Dalton
50.
Schultz was left for dead weeks ago, and he finally had a decent game last week. So he's back on
Yeah.
the waiver radar for people.
Yeah, so I would be interested in him. And again, Jake Ferguson, if he's out there still, you know, almost 30 targets on the year.
Yeah,
That'll do it for you.
yeah. My concern is what happens to him when Jones comes back, but that's the same concern I have for everyone in a Packers uniform. I don't know what the splits are once that happens because they need to figure out how to run the ball if they think they're going to win any football games, and I think they know that.
Oh, for Musgrave?
Yeah, I don't know what that does to the total amount of passes thrown. I don't know what the new
Oh
split
yeah.
is.
Hmm.
So with Watson and Aaron Jones going to be playing again here soon, I don't know what that is now.
Hmm.
But it's any tight end, so you
Right.
know it's hard to argue with just the raw number of 30 targets. The ones that I'm a little more for me, it's Logan Thomas is number one comfortably,
Hmm.
just far and away Logan Thomas. And I wouldn't spend a lot on this because no one is truly injury prone. But if there was any outside of Mike Williams, if there was anybody that was actually like going to qualify, it'd be him because it's concussions. It's not like he broke his arm. You know what I mean? And that's
Hmm.
medically proven. The more concussions you have, the more susceptible you are to concussions.
Hmm.
Plus other injuries, fun injuries that he's had over the years. But when he's out there, man, do they love to throw it to him. So he's the number one pickup for me. It's not close. Like, go get him. As far as things that are widely available, yeah, Musgrave would be on the list. He'd be in the top three. I still don't fully trust it because I don't know what that's going to be in the future.
Hmm.
Number three is Kate Otten, just because somebody's got to play tight end for Tampa, and there is a non-zero chance that Mike Evans is going to miss another game or two.
Hmm.
Because when you're over 30, those hamstrings don't heal the way that they used to. Ask me how I know. Um, the so he'd be somewhat interesting, but tight end is just a wasteland. If you want to
Feels
go pick
like
up
it
Dalton
always
Schultz,
is.
I don't care. Like,
Yeah.
knock yourself out. Like, but a lot of it is just crap. And then as far as guillotine things that might be available, obviously, if Kelsey got clipped, uh, I would spend a pretty decent amount of money on Kelsey, even
Hmm.
knowing that he's not 100%. Because in my Kelsey is the only tight end that matters, and then nothing else matters. Like I like TJ Hawkinson is going to see an uptick. So if he was by some miracle available, I would actually be really interested in that. With Jefferson going on IR,
Hmm.
Mark Andrews is number three to the extent whoop de doo. You know what I mean? It's still tight end. It doesn't really matter. And then you've got like Sam Laporta, Evan Ingram, Darren Waller. Kittle scores 3 touchdowns and it doesn't matter. What a fluke! What a crazy fluke that was. Goddard, same thing. Goddard coming off a really great game. All of those guys, deserve to be rostered, and they're all a thing. And then it's actually weirdly, it's Logan Thomas, Zach Ertz, Ferguson, Cole Kmet, and that's like the back end of it. If any of that's available, go ahead and feel free to stream it because Zach Ertz is just involved enough to be startable, and he's got a really good matchup against the Rams, actually. Jake Ferguson is like, people keep saying he's a top 10 tight end. I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. It means literally nothing. The only thing Jake Ferguson has going for him is that he leads the league in red zone targets. That's good. You like that? That's a tangible stat. That means more to me than top 10 tight end, which means nothing. And then it's Cole Kmet, which is like the same as Zach Ertz and Logan Thomas and Jake Ferguson, where it's like, maybe I get lucky. They're just involved enough to where you might actually feel okay about it. And it's so messed up that beyond that, the one that you're looking at is Kyle Pitts. For how brutal Kyle Pitts has been, you're looking at Kyle Pitts and Jonnu.
I almost like Jonnu better.
I think a lot of people do.
I
But that's
feel
my
like
point.
the Falcons like Jonnu better.
I think I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
I think if you've made it to that point, you've already failed.
Yeah.
Because tight end is just a complete and utter train wreck. Remember when people were trying to pump up David Njoku? Yeah, how'd that go? Hunter Henry was a thing for like 2-3 weeks, and then the Patriots decided they want to get relegated to the XFL.
And Njoku's been a thing for ever since he came in the league, and it just is never gone anywhere.
Yeah, he's similar to what we were just talking about with Tyler, but he's had half a good season, and then he's traded out on that for the next 2 years, and that's how it works.
Mm.
And then he fell into a fire pit. I shouldn't make fun of that, but it's not a good look.
No.
It's kind of like when Jason Pierre-Paul blew his hand off, and we started calling him Lobster Claw, because it's like, I normally wouldn't make fun of people like that, but you blew your hand off with fireworks. Like,
right.
At what point am I allowed to make fun of you? It's like years ago when Nate Burleson tore his ACL because he fell down the stairs trying to get a pizza. Or that's the story that he told people. And then you find out later that's not what happened. What happened was really inappropriate, and he probably would have gotten suspended for it if the real story came out. So that's the story he started telling people. I've heard him tell this story on Good Morning Football. We were making fun of him for like a year because he tore his ACL getting a pizza and fell down the stairs. And I'm like, that's not. And I'm like, that can't be. Like, what do you need, a guardrail? Like what the? And then people were like, and then he's told the story, and he's like, no, I was hammered. And I'm like, there we go. That's the real story. You fell down the stairs getting a pizza is probably true. Well, blackout drunk is the other part of that story. That I believe. As somebody who's done that, like, for real, I've done that. I believe that story. I've done that. That makes sense. But he couldn't tell that story when you're in the league, you know?
No.
But yeah, the tight end sucks. It all goes back to my master plan of removing tight end as a position from fantasy, and we're just going to fold them into wide receiver, and we're just going to have everybody start another flex.
Right.
And that's what we're going to do, because tight end is pointless. We're getting to the point where quarterback is pointless too. That's fun. We got a couple more years on that before we get to there. But basically we're getting to the point very rapidly where quarterback, there's going to be 5 guys that get drafted in the first 3 rounds, and then nobody gets drafted until the 10th round.
Yeah, it kind of feels, I mean, you know, you got Mahomes and, you know, the other ones higher up there between Hurts, Allen, and Jackson all have rushing
all the guys who
upside,
run.
and everyone else.
It's all the guys who run. It's the
Yeah.
It's the Konami code quarterbacks that have a rushing floor.
Right.
And Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And nobody else matters. That's largely where we're getting to. That's going to be how you evaluate quarterback moving forward. All right, it's 5 guys. Everybody else is the same, so they all get pushed down boards, and it's quarterback's going to work like tight end. And then we'll get rid of that as a position, or we'll change how it works, and we'll put everybody on Scott Fishbowl scoring, where it's all based on accuracy. So you get bonus points for completions. You get like 0.5 for every completion, but you get like -1 for every incompletion.
Oh, that sounds like a headache.
It is a headache. I play in several leagues like this. It changes how you view quarterback.
Yeah.
Because you have to have accurate guys. So like right now, Brock Purdy is like a world beater in that league.
Oh yeah.
Because Brock Purdy's like nobody expected him to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns. He's not going to keep doing that. But when you add in the touchdowns and the incredible accuracy, you don't even care that he doesn't run the ball.
No.
He's not throwing enough incompletions for it to matter. Whereas Anthony Richardson, you get the rushing floor, but it's all over the place.
Yeah.
And so it's like it really penalizes you for having inaccurate quarterbacks. Like Jimmy Garoppolo should be good in that league, but with his 6 interceptions, he's terrible right now. Justin Fields is similar. Like when he runs, you get a nice little boost, but when he's super inaccurate and throws a bunch of picks, it's all negated by that. So it changes how you have to evaluate quarterback. So I'm waiting for the day when those become the new official rules for everyone.
Oh God.
Normal people will hate that. Like your dad and your uncle and your drunken college friends. They will hate that. Because they might actually have to like
it.
do math. Yeah, they might actually do math. It's like and nobody agreed to do math.
No, that was not part of the agreement.
All right, we have one last question. We have one last question, and then I'm going to wrap us up here for today, so we can go eat some dinner here. Traded Adam Thielen for Sam Howell, KJ Osborne. Oh, in Dynasty. Oh, probably. Because you got Sam Howell for the duration. Adam Thielen's 31. He's not worth a whole lot in Dynasty. He's kind of a short-term Band-Aid. Because we don't really know what we're getting from Adam Thielen in any future years. You know what I mean? So you lose.
If Sam Howell ends up, doing okay, I think, came
My
out
problem is
okay
I don't like your replacement wide receivers.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing.
That's my
Is like,
problem.
I don't know where Alan Lazard's go. Because Rodgers is
Nowhere.
only going to be in
He'll
the
be in
league
the Jets.
for.
He'll be with the Jets next year. That's all you care about. He'll be with the Jets next year. They'll likely have Aaron Allen. They'll likely have Aaron Rodgers back. That's all you care about. That's a 1-year rental. And then whatever you get after that is whatever it is. It's the KJ Osborne thing that I'm like, I don't know what that is. He's got short-term
Well, I think
value.
you do know what it is, and you don't like it. So
I have an idea of what I think it is.
Yeah.
I've been wrong before. But he's not going to be on the Vikings is the problem. So I don't know where he's going to be playing football in the future. I don't know what's going on. He's young enough. So you got that going for you, which is nice. But I'd argue you won because you traded a 31-year-old wide receiver for Sam Howell and a couple bench prospects.
Yeah. I mean,
what I would need to know is what you dropped to make this happen.
Yeah.
What were the drops? Because you had to cut you had to open up 2 roster spots. So either you have players on IR to float this little deal, or you had to cut something. And in order for me to answer this question all the way down, I would need to know what you cut. And it's Dynasty, so that does change the math. But I think on balance you did win. Because Adam Thielen has a very, very short shelf life. And if you're not, and it matters do you think you're going to win this year? Because if the goal was to win this year, then no, you failed miserably at that trade. That trade should never have been made. But I think by the virtue of then yes. Because you had an IR slot for Connor, and Dontavian Wicks doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that's totally fine. You cut something you didn't need, and you had a roster spot to give anyway. So yeah, I'd say overall you won because you're framing this as a dynasty thing. Whereas if it was being phrased as I'm in a dynasty league and I'm trying to win right now, look at this deal I made, I'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Or the other question would be, how bad are your quarterbacks? This seemed like a good idea. But I'm assuming that you're not in win now mode. You're trying to accumulate assets for the future. And Adam Thielen is 31. And in reality, he doesn't have that much actual value in Dynasty for that reason. Because he's on the wrong side of 30. He's having a good year now, but they only signed him to a 2-year deal anyway. And at some point, they're going to figure out that.
How much longer he's in the league, so.
Yeah, and then this is another thing, too. I mean, I would probably want a third quarterback, too, because Ryan Tannehill's, this is his last year with Titans. He's going to be gone. I don't even know if he's going to be starting in the league. And then you got Russell Wilson for probably one more year before I don't even know what that's going to be anymore. So you might as well take a shot on Sam Howell because as bad as they are, they do seem to like Sam Howell. And I don't know that they'll be bad enough to actually draft a proper quarterback replacement.
No. Then after how recent with how recent the RG3 trade was, I don't think they'll be trading up to get another one anytime soon.
They're going to trade up to get another one and then draft another quarterback right behind him anyway. Is that what
It
we're going to
might
do? We're going to do that. We're going to do that again. We're going
might
to get all
work.
our quarterbacks for the next decade in one draft. That's what we do in Washington. I don't know, but no, I think overall you did fine. It's mostly because in a dynasty league, Adam Thielen at 31 just doesn't have that same value. He only
No.
has value to somebody who's trying to win now.
Mm-hmm.
So it eliminates a lot of players you could even trade with. Nobody who's in accumulate assets mode, like just plug along to get through the year, is going to give one single crap about Adam Thielen whatsoever. So you got some prospects. So I think overall on balance you won, especially because you didn't really have to give up anything. You didn't have to cut anything. So I would give you the W in this trade for sure. In a redraft league, I'd be like, you got rooked really aggressively. But in a in a dynasty league, I could see the reason to do this. You needed another quarterback, and you needed a young one, and there was no way you were going to get C.J. Stroud or probably Bryce Young. Probably be too expensive for what that's worth right now. The only fly in the ointment for me is KJ Osborne. I don't really like Allen Lazard either, but at least I have a pretty strong inclination that next year we'll actually get to see Allen Lazard with Aaron Rodgers again, more than likely, because I think they're going to try and keep everybody together for the most part, assuming he's coming back, which I think he is. And that was the whole point of the Jets even having Allen Lazard. And then anything you get past that is gravy. And then KJ Osborne is like, I'll if you're going to give him to me, I'll take him. Because it's kind of like you needed a replacement to play for Thielen right now anyway. It's not really a proper replacement for Thielen, given what Thielen's been doing, but it's a guy you can play right now short term. And if you got nothing out of KJ Osborne later, see, that's an interesting question, is why would Jefferson come back? We'll have to see what their actual record is when we get there. I understand your comment about done like dinner. They're 1-4. Seen weird crap happen in the NFL over the 15. God, I just made myself feel so old. Like over like the 15 years I've been doing this, I've seen some weird crap, man. And I could see a world where they somehow managed to claw their way back to like 4-4, 4-5. And suddenly there's every incentive in the world for Jefferson to come back. I agree with the general idea that if they're like 2-7 or 1-8 or whatever, by the time we're ready to actually have this conversation, yeah, there's a real chance they just give him the rest of the year off, put him in bubble wrap. But you never know; they might bring him back and then use him a little bit. But I get it. That was the whole thing I was saying. KJ Osborne is just a this year Band-Aid. Beyond that, he has no real dynasty value. He might have a little, but you needed a Band-Aid replacement for Thielen, so it kind of makes sense. Like, I'll give you Thielen, I'll take this, I can use it as a Band-Aid, and in return, you're going to give me 2 prospects for the future. This feels like I'm like a baseball trade, almost. Like it's like a futures deal. So, but Jefferson would want to come back in and of himself because Jefferson is a pro athlete, and they always want to come back. They always want to play, and they always want to put out tape, and they don't want to get rusty, and they hate having to rehab, and they just want to come back and play. Because the alternative is them having to go to rehab. It's at like 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning at the facility every day, missing practice, not being with the team. That's what those guys want to do. They want to be with the team. They want to practice. They want to hang out with their coaches. They don't want to go and rehab on the side with the medical staff. They don't want to do that crap. Like, I've heard a million NFL players talk about how bad that sucks, especially retired guys. Brandon Stokely will tell you about how bad it sucks in great detail. Like I've heard a million Brandon Stokely stories because he's on the radio out here. If you don't know Lance, he's on the radio here in the middle of the day for the
Oh shit.
lunch show. Yeah. Never really heard him talk until I started listening to that show periodically. He's from Louisiana. Did not know that. He has one hell of an accent on him. But yeah, he's explained this a million times. I've heard like Orlando Franklin talk about it too.
Mm.
Like players hate it. They don't want to rehab on the side and get up early and go to the facility and rehab on the side while it's still dark out while everybody else is rocking in for practice and going through the game plan and walkthrough and having fun and screwing around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it depends on what you let me get. I don't know if you mean your idea or if you're trying to educate me on what their schedule is. I know what their schedule is. Chicago sucks. They could beat Chicago. Don't let Chicago rope-a-dope you with 1.5 of a good game. Okay. I need to see a lot more from that before I'm willing to believe in it. The 49ers, I will concede to you. They're going to get their pants pulled down by the 49ers and spanked horribly. Green Bay also sucks, just so we're clear. Like, that's a game they could win because Green Bay is not good. And by the way, Atlanta's not good either. None of those teams are good. Now, the Vikings aren't good either, but those are all 3 of those 4 games are winnable.
I can
One,
see him going 2-2
you could
through
win
that.
some of those games. They're not
Yeah.
foregone conclusions. They have to play the
No.
game. Now, I will concede to you this: if they lose, if they go even 1-3 in that stretch, then we can have the conversation about done
Shut
like
them
Dare,
down.
done,
Yeah.
shut it all down, be done. Like, yes, at that point we can have that conversation. But they could beat a couple of those teams, and then we continue to have this conversation. But
No.
again, KJ Osborne and Adam Thielen, it's like 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. Unless you're telling me you're trying to win this league, which I highly doubt you are. So I'd say you got it. Anyway, we got to skate. We got to get up out of here. I appreciate the conversation and time. Lance, pleasure as always, my friend. Always super fun. Give people the usernames as always as we sign out here.
Twitter until they make me pay for it at LancerOX13.
And check us both out on our Discord. The
Mm.
link is in the show notes. It's also right here. Happy to answer any and all questions. I'll be back on Thursday with Jason for Roster of the People. And then tune in on Sunday for the final countdown. We answer all your questions right before kickoff. And then on Friday, tune in for Locked In with Mason and Vishal. Get all your lovely degenerate gambling picks for the weekend. And then stay tuned for all of our premium members. We're starting a new thing for DFS where our guy Tyler Reed is going to put together a card for you. But that's just for people who subscribe. All the regular people don't get to see that. But if you remember, you can check that out. We're actually going to have him build a card and then share the process and then give everybody that card to play for the weekend. So good stuff there for everybody who's a member. But all right, buddy. Thanks again to everybody for tuning in, and pleasure as always, Lance. I'll see you on Tuesday. And until then, everybody, just keep up the nonsense.